What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is up, everybody? Tuesday. Well, I'm recording this on a Monday, and we actually had Patrick Fitzmaurice on the podcast today. That video will come out a little bit later. He's one of the main guys at Fantasy Pros. So we're talking a lot of fantasy football, obviously quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. It's that time of year. A lot of you guys are drafting teams, trying to decide on some sleepers, on the star players, on the quarterbacks. It's difficult. So this is a guy, they have the top fantasy podcast in America. And we BS about a lot of basically every player that matters and a ton of teams. So that will be later today. But right now, I want to hit on a couple quick things. There's a lot of rumors flying around right now about Brandon Aiyuk. Harbaugh and the Connor Stallions NCAA just doesn't seem to die. Caserio and DeMeco go completely old school, which I like. And I thought Matt Judon today gave just as real of a comment as you'll ever hear. And you really don't hear it enough. Guys speaking how they truly feel when it comes to contracts, hold-ins, holdouts. And I thought it was refreshing. So it's Take Tuesday. So we'll fire out some thoughts on some of the stuff going around. And we'll keep podcasting all week long. So buckle up. Football's here. We got preseason games. There was just brawl after brawl in the Lions-Giants joint practice. You had the Joe Shane, Daniel Jones. You had corners flying. Lot going on there. I've been in one joint practice in my life. It was Niners-Broncos post-Elway. It wasn't really that great, to be honest with you. That might have been Kyle's first year, if I remember correctly. They had I forget what's the quarterback's name from Northwestern, and I think Osweiler, he was gone. It was a bad Bronco team. They were not good at all, and those 49er teams weren't that good either. It was bad. It wasn't anything like what I witnessed some of these clips, and obviously there were some joint practices yesterday with the Chargers and the Rams. I mean, part of the worry in these things, it's only August. You've only been practicing for a couple weeks. You've really probably only had 6-7 days of pads. Puka Nacua hurt his knee. Joey Bosa hurt his hand. It's a nerve-wracking time. It's intense game-level physicality, and you haven't hit anyone else beside your own teammates, so you kind of let it fly a little more. But you get injuries in these things, you just pray to God. It's a little thing. A week here, maybe 2 weeks, which I think Puka is nothing serious. I guess we'll never know with Joey. We'll just know when he's back at practice because Jim Harbaugh is just adamant, like, I'm not a doctor. We understand that, Jim. But you can say, hey, he did this. Like when a guy pulls a hamstring, you can just go, he pulled a hamstring. I don't know when he'll be back. But Jim refuses to do that, which is kind of comical and funny and enjoyable to watch. But you're not really able to do that during the regular season. You have to announce injuries, which, in fairness, he said he will follow the protocols, though it was always kind of like pulling teeth when he was at Michigan. It's just, and the Niners, he was bad at it too. It's just not really his thing. But before we dive into some of this, you guys know I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Game Time. I've been using them for a long time. Many of you have used them, and you know it doesn't get any more seamless. It doesn't get any easier, and there probably is not a spot, well, I know, where you can find better deals because they do have flash deals. So what do you want to do? You want to go to a football game this fall? You want to go watch your favorite NFL team? You want to go to a college game? You want to go to some big rivalry? They got you covered. Search the event, search the venue. You can search by where you want to sit, the price point, the sight lines. It gives you the stadium. It gives you the arena. I've been to basketball games, hockey games, baseball games, concerts. You want to go to a concert? There is not an easier app to use if you want to go to a concert. I cannot recommend it enough. If you want to get a laugh in comedy show, they have you covered as well. So here's what you do. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Let's start with Aiyuk. I don't think my stance has changed that much. I would be stunned if they traded him. I really would. Because if you are going to trade a player like this, and I'm not going to put him on these guys' levels, but when Devontae Adams was traded, when Tyreek Hill was traded, they were traded before the draft. Because when you are a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, even if you get a first-round pick, hell, you get a first and a second-round pick right now. How does that help you week 1 against the Jets? How does that help you when you play the Rams, when you play the Chiefs? It does. The answer is it doesn't. It simply does not. And to me, you cannot remove Brandon Aiyuk for a draft pick. And I've said all along, I understand their stance on him. He wants to be paid like these guys that are way more productive. And his argument constantly is, well, if you put me in an offense that would spread the ball out and throw it more, I would be more productive. Might be true, might not. We don't live in a world of hypotheticals where we get to know the answers. Well, maybe we would if he does get traded. But that is not the 49ers offense. He's never going to be a guy that catches 100 balls. Not when he's playing with George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. They literally just drafted a wide receiver in the first round, Christian McCaffrey. Hell, Jordan Mason said he bought a jugs machine and was catching balls every day this summer with his dad. Spent $3,000 on it. So I get their hesitation of breaking him off $30 million a year. Does that make sense? Will we get the ROI on this player? But if that is their stance right now, kind of on them that they couldn't work out something before the draft, if they know they're going to be unwilling to go above a number and he's not going to budge. Now, listen. This is the NFL. He is under contract this year. Then he has the franchise tag. What's he going to do if the 49ers go, we're not trading you? Just never play in a game? That's not how it works. That wouldn't help his value of one day trying to get traded. But if you're a team going for a Super Bowl, are you trying to create those dynamics in your locker room, which is pretty top-notch? They got a bunch of high-level guys who are really focused. It's not an easy place to play. So do you want a guy having a lot of issues and pouting with his contract? And I give him credit. He showed up. He's gone to all the meetings. But I do think the 49ers, and I talked about this with Colin yesterday, of all the good teams in the NFC, like, listen, you can't, if a guy gets injured at a joint practice or in practice, it's football. It happens. It sucks. As long as it's not a devastating injury, it's just part of the business. But there can't be a team in the NFC with more drama going on. Maybe the Cowboys, but a lot of that is, well, they just don't have contracts past this year. And CeeDee Lamb is holding out. But the 49ers also have a holdout. And his name is Trent Williams, who's kind of important because last time I checked, they don't really have a replacement for him on the roster. One of the biggest mistakes in recent draft memory is when they flipped DeForest Buckner, and they could have taken Tristan Wirfs, who's now the highest paid tackle in the league, and they traded back and they got Javon Kinlaw, who was a disaster for them. But I think this is tough because I do support, like, listen, this is big business. So having tough conversations in contract negotiations in any industry when you're talking these type of dollars is par for the course. You're not just handing out free money. That's not the way it works. And it even gets more challenging when you go, is this really worth it? Like, ultimately, the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, not because they didn't think he was one of the greatest players Andy Reid's ever coached, because he was. It was because they started looking at the books and they went, we're going to struggle paying Chris Jones if we make this decision. And we think Patrick Mahomes is this good. We'll build up the defense and we'll go from there. And they did. And they won 2 Super Bowls. The Packers lowballed Devontae, and clearly by his words on receiver, that was kind of the end. And he was like, you disrespected me, I'm out. The number the 49ers offered, they offered him $26 million. $26.5 million a year. And I would assume 60 to 70 guaranteed. So when you see DJ Moore get 80 guaranteed and like 28.5 or whatever he got a year, You go, well, DJ's been more productive than you. And that's kind of the way football contracts work, based on production, based on your importance to my offense. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a really good player, but like it's so easy to turn on NFL Live and to see every former player like, you got to pay him. Well, do you? I mean, do you? Because they got rid of DeForest Buckner, who was a team captain and a badass. And they've been to 3 straight NFC championships and a Super Bowl since. So it's like part of football is making tough decisions. Bill Belichick did it all the time. But they're in this position now where if they have to make a difficult decision, they go, listen, we're never giving him that number. We never are. And it's like sometimes, like in life, you got to draw a line in the sand and be like, maybe it's just best to move on and make a trade. It just does not help. And one rumor that's out there is a trade to the Browns for Amari Cooper. Amari, a lot like Aiyuk, is really productive. Now, he's been doing it for a longer period of time. But when I watch Amari Cooper, I go, that's not really a Kyle Shanahan guy. So I would be stunned if Aiyuk is traded. I would be very surprised if he is traded and it's for Amari Cooper and a draft pick or something. That would surprise me because I've been watching Amari Cooper's whole career. He's better, I think, than a lot of people think, but he definitely never lived up to early on in his career. Like, he's going to be one of the best wide receivers of his generation. But to me, he does not scream Kyle Shanahan. Not, I would say, the most physical, tough guy, good route runner. Definitely get you consistently 75, 80 catches a year, get you 1,000 yards. If you look at his football reference page, it's just he produces year in, year out. But can't see Kyle Shanahan moving on from Brandon Aiyuk, who kind of hangs his hat beside as a great route runner as well. Fantastic blocker, tough SOB. Like when I think Brandon Aiyuk, I think War Daddy, which is part of the reason the 49ers are probably torn on this. Like, yeah, should we just overpay him a little bit? Not really what I think with Amari Cooper. And some teams don't mind. And listen, could he just balance out with Kittle and Debo? Probably. And could you get by for a year and then pivot off him? Yeah. Amari's kind of being, even him being thrown out there, feels like Amari's a very NBA, right? Productive, makes a lot of money, but when it's all said and done, he played on like 5 different teams, like in the prime of his career. Like, how did that happen? So my take as of the day, I still can't see them trading him. And if they were to for a draft pick, I think that's just awful planning. And if it's a draft pick and a player, it's just very, very risky. And I think these teams, like the 49ers, like the Ravens, like the Lions, obviously like the Bills, I mean, anything less than being in the conference championship and more than likely having a home game feels like a letdown. They're not the Chiefs, none of those teams, but the standard and the expectation couldn't be any higher, and rightfully so. It's like, if not now, then when? Not playing best ball at DraftKings? You're missing out. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with 2 millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're set it and forget it type, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger roster so injuries won't end your season. Only the draft and that's it. You're set for the year. 15 million prize pool. Still not convinced? Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get in on all the best ball action. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of the 2 millionaires only on DraftKings. Harbaugh, I'm glad he's back in the NFL, but I'm going to miss him on Saturdays. But it's cool that he went to the Chargers, and it's going to be a good experience to resurrect a franchise. But this Connor Stallions, which I can't even pretend to know, clearly some shady shit was going on. I've supported shady shit in the NFL forever. Welcome to the business. Everyone's trying to gain an edge. Like, guess where else shady stuff happens? Wall Street. I've always said the NFL is Wall Street on grass. And when Belichick got popped for stealing signs, everyone was stealing signs. Everyone was, college and pro. Now, when you put a guy on a sideline and you fake a badge, there are probably lines. But listen, I don't care what industry you're in. If it's competitive and there's a lot of money on the line, everyone's pushing the envelope. Some people get caught, some people don't. But if you don't think someone is, you're probably getting lapped. So you better be looking for an edge. Now, did Connor Stallions cross the line? He is a Marine. Thank you for your service. We appreciate what you did. Understand why Jim Harbaugh likes him, but I also understand why the other coaches are pissed off. It's pretty clear the NCAA hates Michigan and hates Jim Harbaugh. And I've said this for a while. I do not understand why any of these Power 5 major programs, but especially now, the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, the Power 4, because Power 5 is dead, why they need the NCAA. In what world could you pick up a phone call from one of those idiot administrators in that building and take anything they say seriously? You don't need them for your television contracts. They have nothing to do now with the playoffs. When are we breaking away and letting these people no longer influence anything? I saw Kentucky got in trouble and had to vacate wins. Is there anything dumber than vacating wins? Like, no, I watched the game. They won the game. It used to happen all the time in NCAA basketball. It's like, that Memphis Final Four team did not exist. No, yeah, it did. I watched them play, and they were really fun. I really enjoyed them. Derrick Rose was must-watch TV. It's happened in football over the years, and every single time it's like, Pete Carroll, got to vacate the Reggie Bush games, take away his Heisman. It's like, shut up. You guys are idiots. And there comes a point in time, like, they're not the government. You don't need them. And you can argue we don't need the government either. But you definitely don't need the NCAA. And to me, it's clearly inevitable to ask these guys out of the deal, especially as it's going with the money that's going to have to get split up from some of these lawsuits. I can't imagine the NCAA and major college football coexisting much longer because it just no longer makes sense. Nick Caserio and DeMeco. I think most people, including myself, are products professionally of how we learn when we're young in terms of when we get into a business. I know my football philosophies were shaped by really three people. Pat Hill, who I worked for right out of college at Fresno State for 2 years, then working for Andy Reid, and then right when I got into radio, Jim Harbaugh was coaching the 49ers, and I was going to practices and going to the games for a couple years. And that influence on me in my 20s has shaped the way I look at players, what I like in players. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but we all have biases when we want a certain coach, when we want a certain team, what we want it to look like at different positions, from a game-to-game standpoint, from a toughness standpoint. And everyone's different. And we're all a product of our environment. I think it's a lot like that in life, how you grow up, the morals and everything you're taught. Like the morals and like the basic way I conduct life has not changed in 30 plus years. And I don't think it'll ever change. Now, you constantly adapt and maybe change opinions on things, but there are some core philosophies to the way I live that were just shaped like by my dad. I get anxiety if I'm late. I have a tendency to be way early to things. And that's a product of probably when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old that was kind of beaten into me by him, literally and figuratively a little bit. But like being on time, standing up straight, looking someone in their eye, shaking their hand, like basic things that if no one had taught me that, I probably wouldn't do it. Now, maybe you can learn as you get older, but like, why does Andy Reid love to throw the ball? Why does he love to throw the ball? Well, who did he work for, or who did he play for in college? Well, he went to BYU in the early 80s, a program way ahead of their time. What were they doing? When everyone was running like the veer, the triple option. I saw a clip the other night from like Oklahoma versus Nebraska. It looked like both teams were running the wing T because that's what a lot of teams did, essentially, versions of this crazy running game with in college forever. Well, BYU was spreading it out and throwing the ball with Jim McMahon, with Steve Young, and Andy was an offensive lineman there. It's not a coincidence. Pat Hill grew up in a much more physical, old school line of thinking. So did Jim Harbaugh. And those guys like running. Their favorite play is power. When you pull a guard and a tackle and run it right up the middle with a fullback. They have wet dreams thinking about that play. And when it's working, they will run that play over and over and over again. Like our guard is pulling here, and he is going to lead up the hole with our fullback coming downhill. Get ready. We don't even need to hide the play, right? And there's a physicality behind that. Well, Nick Caserio, forever, there were old school coaches. We've got so many young guys now that are head coaches, right? I think there's a large percentage of guys that are under 50 that are currently NFL head coaches. And Sean McVay a couple years ago, and I agree with him. Like I have old school football philosophical beliefs that I don't think will ever leave me. But I'd also go, well, I'm paying this guy $70 million. I'm not risking him in a preseason game. But Belichick, Bruce Arians, obviously Andy Reid, Pete Carroll, they liked playing their guys in the preseason. Because back in the 80s, in the 90s, and 15, 20 years ago, that's what you did. And so why would you change it now if it's been successful for you your whole life? Well, Andy Reid is one of the rare guys who still plays his guy in the preseason. Well, Nick Caserio, who is a Belichick guy, and DeMeco, who now works hand in hand with Caserio and also played for a year for Andy Reid, said that he is going to play his guys in the preseason. Now, listen, like I said, if I was in charge, if most of you were in charge listening, I think we'd all agree, yeah, it's high-end starters. CJ Stroud, I'm sorry you're not getting any reps. But I respect people who stick to their beliefs. And whether a guy gets hurt or not, like this is what I'm comfortable doing. I think these reps matter. It's easy like the Raiders. I saw Antonio Pierce, another old school guy, has a quarterback competition. And he's like, if we had to name a starting quarterback right now, we couldn't. Both the guys are going to play in the preseason. One will start the first game. The other will start the second game. They'll each play a quarter. Like that's basic football. That's stuff you have to do. You don't really have a choice. But on certain teams, when you got star players, like I'm just not risking it. And there are still coaches, and Andy definitely leads this charge. And DeMeco, one of the rare young guys, like, yeah, my guys are going to play. I think this is important. And I just respect anyone who just sticks to their beliefs, right, wrong, or indifferent. If you believe it and that's what's made you successful, don't just change because other people are changing and just to do something that doesn't make you feel good about doing it. And I respect it. Now, keep my fingers crossed. Hopefully no one gets injured, but it's been happening for a long time, and there's a lot of dudes in the Hall of Fame that spent a lot of reps and snaps in the preseason.
What's going on? I was just about to podcast. But you know what I usually do before I podcast? My friends at viahemp.com sent me these THC-free flow state focus gummies. I've been taking one every day the last couple weeks before I podcast, and I gotta say, I think my podcasts have been pretty fire. Now, I do like a little THC, especially at night. I've already used one of these. This is my second batch, the Dreams one. It's got 5 milligrams of THC. It's got 90 milligrams of CBD. Cannot recommend this one enough. And here's the thing with Via. You can go to 0 to 100 milligrams, so you can control what you're comfortable with. The balance between CBD and THC. If you like no THC, they have a lot of THC products that, like I said, cannot recommend them enough. So here's what I need you to do. If you're 21 or over, go to the link below in the description. Use the promo code JOHN, that's my name, promo code John, for 15% off. And when you check out, make sure you let them know who sent you, 3 and Out Podcast. So prioritize your recovery, enhance your everyday life, like I have with Via.
Last but not least, Matt Judon, who, controversial, I think would be a strong word, but definitely some weird stuff's been going on. Kraft's a little cheap. He's been a star player, had a bunch of sacks his first 2 years there, and then last year gets injured. Clearly, they're a little hesitant to give him a big extension. He wants one. Was showing up to practice, doing the hold in, but then clearly was making the coaches uncomfortable with him just kind of sitting around. They kicked him out of practice. He was missing for a day. Then the day he was at practice, full pads. And they asked him, like, what changed? And he said, this isn't about practice. I got to do what I'm contracted and obligated to do so I don't lose my money. And I thought, I respect it. Because so many players, like, yeah, we're working through it. We'll figure it out. I'm not comfortable doing this. I'm trying to be my best teammate. Like, no, this is a business, and this is simply about money. I think I'm a $23 million player. I'm scheduled to make way less than that, and my contract is up after this year. I don't agree with their take on my situation, but I don't have much leverage here because they can find me every single day. And I don't care who you are, unless your name's like Jeff Bezos or Steve Ballmer, 50 G's a day adds up. And I would say it would add up pretty quick. So if you're Matt Judon, you're like, I'm not paying. You miss a week, all of a sudden they're charging you 250 grand. You're like, this is crazy. Like, you miss 3 weeks, it adds up. Now, a guy like Trent Williams would say, yeah, I'm going to miss time because CeeDee Lamb, because he's still under his rookie contract, they can waive all the fines. The veteran players, Judon, if you were to hold out, Trent Williams, you're not able to waive. Well, Trent's just going to be like, okay, I got 800 grand in fines, add that to my salary. And that's where a guy at his level, who's even on a different level than Judon, and part of Judon is we're the Patriots. We stink right now. We're kind of resetting. We don't want to hitch our wagons to an older guy who's just coming off an injury, even though you're probably, if you're not our best player, you're one of our best players when healthy, but it's still like, you probably won't be on the team next year. So we're not comfortable giving you a large contract right now, but we do want you here playing because you are a good player. And maybe if you play well, we'll trade you and you can go somewhere else and get a contract extension. But I respect anyone who just says what actually is going on because that is so rare now in sports. Everyone bullshits, coaches, players, rightfully so, because the media then just twist their words. This is about as real as you can get. I'm here because I don't want to lose my money.